All right, Be'ez Hashem, Perek Yud Ches. Yuvaldi, let's go. So now we've explained Be'ika that that it's very close for a person to keep the Torah, to do the mitzvahs, and we said that is both in Machshava, Dibur, and Ma'aseh as well. And we said the only focus really is the brain. The focus starts from the brain and it goes down and spreads into the rest of the body. Now we want to explain how korov it is. Meaning this business of korov that the Heilige Baal Tanya keeps on telling us that it's very korov ma'oid, which the Torah says, the Lashon HaTorah of course. But what does it mean exactly? How close is it actually? So let's have a look. Let's explain more. Again, it's Lashon HaPosuk, not Lashon Tanya. The Posuk says, Ki korov elecha dova ma'oid. What does this mean? What is this word ma'oid? Sheba Posuk, Ki korov elecha dova ma'oid v'chole. We really have to understand a deep understanding in the following. Ki af mi shedai tiktsoru b'dias Hashem. Ve'ein lo leiv lahavim b'gedulas ein soy baruch hu lahodim menu techilu rechimu. Afilu b'moichet v'nosadavat. Meaning, everything we said until now, very nice. If a guy has a brain, he has an intellect capacity that's amazingly high, and he has the ability to contemplate and to think about the Rabbeinu Shalom, Mispoinus, Agadas Hashem. He's got deep thoughts. Okay, Gavaldi, he could do this. But Zuk the Baal Tanya, what happens if a person who's got Daita Ktsoret B'Dias Hashem, in other words, he hasn't got any deep thoughts. He's not one of these deep thinking guys. He's a regular normal guy. He doesn't have all these deep, contemplations and his spinniness and all these things, right? That will generate this energy, this love, this fear that we've been talking so much about. So maybe you'll say that person is not a gear. Maybe he can't get there. It's not korov for him. So the Baal Tanya 9. He can. Bepiv ubelvavoy mamish kedeliba be'emes lamitoy. Betechilu rechimu she'ava musuteres shebelev klolius yisrael she'erusha lanu ma'avoseinu. That means lemaisa, a very, very important thing. The Heilige Baal Tanya is telling us, in a Chanami, there are two different types of people. There's a few different types of people. One is the type of person that we've been speaking about who has the ability, the mental capacity to think about deep thoughts about Hashem, godless Hashem, and through that generates the love, the fear of Hashem, which generates Avas Hashem, and that's easy with Eved Hashem. And then you have someone who's not able to do that. So the Baal Tanya says there's a new point over here that he hasn't mentioned before. And that is every single Yid has an inner love and fear of Hashem that is B'Yerusha. He gets it with an inheritance. It's automatic. He's a Yid. He's a Bnei Avram Yitzchak Yaakov. He has this Gavaldiga Ava and Yira. He has to know how to get it out. But it's there. Right? It's a Yerusha. That's what he says now. He says, Ava Musuteres means it's like sort of buried deep all the way in. Shebelev Klal Yisrael, which all of Klal Yisrael in a general rule have. Sheyerusha lanim avoseinu. And that comes from Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov. Okay, so that's a very important thing over here. Now, Rak. We have to be maktim, we have to introduce, and we have to explain Tchila first. Behete very well. A few things. Okay? Number one, Shoirish Avazu. Number two, Ve'inyana. Number three, Ve'eich Yerushalanu. Number four, Ve'eich Nichlal Ba Gam Tchilu. All of these 4 points, said the Baal Tanya, I need to explain to you. What are they? Number one, Shoirish Avazu. The Shoirish of this Ava, where does it come from? Where's the root of it? Ve'inyana as well, you have to explain as well. In other words, what type of Ava is it? What type of love is this? Where does it come from? A love for what? Number three, Ve'eich Yerushalanu. How is it a Yerusha? Like nothing else in Yiddishkeit, in Ruchnius, is a Yerusha. Right? The Gemara says just because you learn doesn't mean your son automatically has that Torah. It's not a Yerusha. Right? Rav Scheinberg was at Salma. Rav Shiva used to say, Torah is not be Yerusha. Just because you sit and learn Tosfos and Gemara's Yom V'Loda doesn't mean that your son gets that Torah. It's something that every single one of us have to acquire on our own. So there's nothing in Ruchnias that comes B'Yerusha. All of a sudden, this does come B'Yerusha. What does that mean? And the last thing is, Ve'ech nichla bo gam t'chidu. This is a good point. Love, a person can get B'Yerusha sometimes. We understand that a person's a very loving person. And you look at his father, you're like, oh, now I get it. That can be like sort of, it can transcend, it can come down. Whereas Yira, fear, is not something that transcends that. It doesn't come down to Yerusha. So, trauma for sure, but that's not Yira of Hashem. That's the trauma that he's bringing in from what he experienced, or unless you're talking about from the Holocaust, they say that the children, that's what you mean, that the children of the Holocaust had this, but that's because there was a physical thing that they experienced when they were alive, right? When they were alive, that they got from their parents, even though they didn't chap at the time that they were getting it, right? In other words, sometimes they were 3-4 years old and they didn't chap what was going on, right? Dr. Gibber Matei talks all about this idea that a person can get the trauma from his parents when he's a young little kid and doesn't chap anything. He talks about the idea that young babies in various places where they're ghettos and wherever it was, they used to be screaming, even though they had no idea what was going on. And the goyim is there as Yiddish babies. See, they chap something was going on because the Shama feels it, and the emotions also pick it up. And that doesn't mean that they're born many years later that they're going to get that necessarily. So that's not B'Yerusha. It's they're getting Metzias while they're alive. You hear the difference?
Generational trauma also goes further.
Sometimes, but that's not what he means. But this is the Yira. Yeah. When they're alive, when the kid's alive.
They treat them a certain way.
Oh, and Mimela causes them, right?
Yira can be the same thing. Can you see from the father that the father has Yiras Hashem, and that father has Yiras Hashem?
You have to be of a certain intellect and madrega to be able to do that. A 1-month-old baby is not going to chap as fast get Yiras Hashem. Love, however, you do pick up as a young kid, even very young. Al Capone, that's what the Baal HaTanya is telling us. We need to figure out what this means. What does this mean that we all have this Yerusha of Ava and Yira? Anyway. Okay. V'hinyan. Ki avos hein hamerkava. Right? This is something that the Chazal have told us many times, by the way. It's a medrash. He quotes over here. You can see it, Medrash Rabbah. That our avos, they were the merkava. Merkava means like a wagon, right? It means like a vehicle. That's what it is. The Ramban says clearly, in fact, the Baal HaTanya brings it later in the Geras HaKodesh, that the Ramban says that when it comes to the avos, their thoughts were never detached from Hashem, even for a moment. They were constantly connected to the Rabbeinu Shalom. They were never detached from Hashem, which is why they call, I think in English it's more like a chariot. Maybe it's a better word of a Merkava. Because a chariot is pulled by a horse. It doesn't deviate on its own. It's just going after the horse. So our avos, that's what it's called. Our avos, heina merkava, meaning they're a chariot after Hashem, that they're just going on, their thoughts, their whole mahus, their whole mitzias was by the Rabbeinu Shalom. V'yal came, zochu lahamshech never shruach an Hashem levnei yemachreim ad oilam ma'isa sfiras kedusha sheba oilam as atzilus be'etzirasiyah. Right? They were able, our avos, Avram Yitzchak Yaakov, were able to give over, and they were able to prolong and continue the Nevesh, Ruach, and Neshama to their children, ad oilam ma'isa, right, to the essence spheres of the 4 worlds, which are Atzilus Bria, Yitzira Asiyah, right, because every Neshama Lemaisa has some kind of chelik in all of these 4 worlds. So of course, each person according to his madriga, myself, and according to Lemaisa, what he does in the world. Even the lightest guy, as well, right? Even Lemaisa, just to conception, just from the fact of being born, nefesh the malchus da asiya, she madriga tachtonish, she produce asiya. Since at the end of the day, since we know that everyone contains all of these spheres, gets a little bit complicated, a little bit technical. That within that is dressed Chachma de Malchus dat Tzilas, Chachma dat Tzilas, Sheba Me'or Ein Soy Baruch Hu Mamish, and through that, the illumination of the light of the Ein Sof of the Rabban Shem, Kediksiv, as it says, Hashem b'chachma yasad oretz v'kulam b'chachma asisa. So, without going too much detail, and maybe we'll continue this tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow, Be'ez Hashem, is that there is a Metzias of a Yerusha coming, And there is a mitzias of a neshama giving over to the next neshama. And we had this all the way in the beginning of Tanya, if you remember also, where he said, when he talks about every yid being a chedek kamim ma'amamish, he talked about the idea that every child is be'etzem, coming from their parent in a real mitziastic oifen. Mimela, we come from the Rabban Shalom in a very, very mitziastic oifen also, which means that we inherit certain things from the avos who are totally attached to Hashem, and since they had that, we also get that. He's going to explain in Mitzvah tomorrow a little bit more, Be'ez Hashem.